Hey guys, okay, I'm here tonight discussing graphing quadratic functions. In other words, blah, blah, blah. That sounds really boring. But anyway, it just means we're graphing parabolas. All right. And so I want to make this as easy as possible, and it can be. I really want you to get your notes out and take notes. All right. So I'm going to write the problem down. 2x squared minus 4x minus 5. And remember that we know that this is a parabola because there's an x squared here. So whenever we have any variable that's squared, we're talking about a parabola because we're going to have two solutions. Okay, and so we're going to start off the same way that we did with the quadratic formula. We're going to locate our A, B, C. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we remember how to do that. We say our A equals 2, our B equals -4, and our C equals -5. That's the most important thing that we need to recognize. And so if we remember that a parabola looks like a U, it's either going to go up or it's going to be an upside down U. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So actually, I want to start there because I want us to know that there's a little trick that I just want to give you right away. So if you're looking at this function, you automatically are going to know that this quadratic is going to be a positive quadratic because you're going to look at the number right at the beginning and it's a positive number. So that means our parabola is going to go up. So let's just put that note over here. So if your parabola is going up, that means it's a positive. All right, and if it's going down, that means it's negative. And so if you have a positive number in front of your x term, then you know that it's going up. And if you have a negative number in front of your x term, you know it's going down. So that should actually help you a lot when you're looking at problems like on the study guide or on a test where they're going to give you a parabola and they're going to ask you, well, which graph is this equation? And you can look at and you know that automatically this has to be a positive graph, meaning it has to go upwards. So I just want to make sure we understand that. So we need to know first that every parabola has a vertex. That means a starting point. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that word. We have a vertex. That means we're going to look at where the graph is starting. So I'm just going to put our starting point is our vertex. And there's a formula that we're going to remember for that. Well, first of all, we know that our vertex has to be a point, so a coordinate point. So we have to have x and y. And the first thing you need to remember is that a vertex for x has the formula of, you're going to plug in -b over 2a. That is your x value. So that formula is really important. -b over 2a is how you're going to find your x. Once you find your x, then we're going to be able to solve for y. So we'll talk about that in a moment. So let's first find out our vertex. Let's find out our x value. So let's go over here and look back. So we know we have a -b. Basically, I said a negative boy, right? So we have a -b. So we're going to put our parentheses for our b, and we have -4 right there, over 2, okay? And then our parenthesis for a is 2. So let's simplify right here. So now we have negative times a negative is a positive, over 2 times 2 is 4. So your parabola, the x value equals 1 because 4 divided by 4 is 1. So that's our x value. So our vertex is 1. And now the way that we find the y value is we're just going to substitute our 1. We're going to plug our 1 back into our original equation to solve for y. And you guys have already been doing that when we've been doing elimination and substitution and all that stuff. So let's go ahead and look at our original equation. Let's rewrite it. 2x squared minus 4x minus 5. And now we're just going to put a parenthesis wherever we see an x. Again, we're just using those same skills that we've already been using. All right, just putting a parenthesis for every time we have an x. And inside the x, we're going to plug a 1 in because that is our x value. And now we're going to solve. So remember, we have to keep our order of operations. So we're going to do our exponent first. So 1 squared equals 1. So 2 times 1 equals 2 minus 4. So 2 minus 4 is negative 2 minus 5, and that equals negative 7. Just to recap, when you have two negatives, you always add them and keep the negative. So now we have solved for our vertex. We know that our starting point is at 1, negative 7. That is our vertex. That is really important. So we're just going to put a V here. Vertex is 1, negative 7. But I want you guys to do a little T-chart for this parabola. And you're going to have your X and Y. And so you know that your starting point is 1, negative 7. So that's going to be your first point. And let's just quickly sketch that because I want you to see what it looks like. So here's our graph here. And if we're going to look for 1, positive 1, negative 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we know that our vertex starts at 1, negative 7. And we know it has to go up because we know it's a positive parabola. It's a positive. So now we're going to try to see, okay, well, we have to look, and remember, a parabola looks like a U. So our graph needs to have something that comes over this way, and it has to come up on the same side. That is going to be equal on both sides. So we know that somewhere over here, we have to find another point. So I'm going to give you a little strategy. We're going to, whenever you can, the best number to try is 0. Because remember, 0 is over here on your x-axis, correct? So 0 is always a really good number to try. So let's go ahead and plug in 0 over into our original equation. So here, let's write down our original equation again. 2x squared minus 4x minus 5. And now let's plug in our 0 for our x. Okay, all we're doing is plugging in 0 for x. And let's solve that. So 0 squared is 0, so 2 times 0 is 0. So 0 minus 0 minus 5, we know equals negative 5, correct? So we know our y value is negative 5. So we have another point here. So we have one more point. So we have 0, negative 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to plug in again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to plug in our point right here. And our point was 0, negative 5. So we're almost done because we know that we've found one point. Now we just need to find a point over here, but let me give you a trick. Because it's a parabola, it has to be symmetric, meaning you could take that parabola and split it straight down the middle and it would be the same size, like on one side it would equal the same side on the other side. So if you were to fold it in half, it would be exactly symmetric, right? So let's think about that for a second. So let's look at 1, negative 7 and 0, negative 5. And let's see how far we went over to the left and up. Let's see. Let's look at this point. We went over 1, right? And we went up 2, correct? Over 1 and up 2. So don't you think that if you went over here over 1 and up 2, wouldn't that be the next point? So again, I went over 1 and up 2. And here I went over 1 and up 2. Because exactly, they are symmetrical. There's your next point. So let's go ahead and mark that point. That was positive 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, negative 5 was our next point. Well, if you're not sure if we were correct, I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm going to tell you that if you were to plug in 2 into our original equation, you would indeed get negative 5. I'm not going to do that in this video because I want to save time. But if you don't believe that that's true, I want you to plug that in and try it yourself. And you will see that if you plug in 2 for the x, you will get that. So anyway, let's go back to our graph here. And you're going to notice that this graph looks like a parabola now. It's exactly a U. It's supposed to be really curvy. And it looks like that. That's your graph. That's what your graph would look like. And so This is very important. So this is what it looks like. Um, and we're going to talk about a few different features of this parabola on the next video. So this is our part 1. I'm going to send over part 2 in just a few minutes. All right. So hopefully you got this down.